and welcome back to my orchid life. My name is Trish. I appreciate you coming over for a visit. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you are a returning viewer, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about Paphiopedilums, and I am going to repot one and tell you why. Before that though, a lot of people who can grow Phalaenopsis, which we have one here, should be able to grow Paphiopedilums. According to experts, and I have a Paphiopedilum here, Mele Star, that I have had since, let's see, February of 2021, so almost a year. But this is her. She has a beautiful yellow bloom. I'll post a picture of it if I can find it. But she had, notice I use the word had, 4 new growths. So she's got 1 here, 2, and then 3. And then if we look right down, right where my finger is, I cut that new growth off. And the reason I cut that new growth off is it started getting really yellow looking just at the base, and it wasn't rot. So I kind of peeled back some of the leaf and it was full of mealybugs. So I just, I'm not gonna deal with it, just cut it off, get rid of the whole thing. I have 3 more to go. So that is the story of my mealybug adventure, and I've been keeping an eye out like an eagle. So now let's just compare this Paphiopedilum and our Phalaenopsis here. So they do have similar looks to them. However, a Phalaenopsis you can pot above the media because the aerial roots that are grown in the air, really they're all aerial roots, but what we call aerial roots, will still survive. So they will continue growing. As you can see, this one has a grow tip on it still, or they'll grow down into the soil. It doesn't matter. They don't need the soil to grow into in order to survive. They'll continue. However, your Paphiopedilums need to be potted right at the soil level, so that as the new roots grow, they have something to go into, because if they grow into the air, they will not continue, they'll just desiccate. And the one that I am going to repot today is, so I've got this one. This is the Paphiopedilum Spring Pleasure, right here. A few days ago, and I did put a little bit of bark at the top of it, because if we move the bark out of the way, the new bark, let me try not to get the old bark out of the way, is we have a new fan growing right here. So she has a new fan growing right here. I put a little bit of moss there too. That fan, so I've got it down to the original media that I bought her with. So if you look, the fan, if she were to start growing roots, has nothing to grow into. The media is way down here. Any roots that she would try to grow would fail. And she is a mottled leaf, and mottled meaning these beautiful patterns. So even when she's not in bloom, but let's just take a moment to look at the bloom. Even when she's not in bloom, she will have this beautiful foliage to look at. Let me grab her out of the pot real quick, so I can show you her gorgeous bloom. Oh, and her roots too. Let me just shake that off. So, look at this bloom. Is that not just gorgeous? Let me move the camera up just a little bit so you can see her. Look at that. Is that not just beautiful? Look at her hood. It's almost velvety feeling with the striations in there, and then the speckling on the sepals. And look at her slipper lip. Is that not gorgeous? And then inside you can see her throat is almost the same color. It's just gorgeous. She's just beautiful. Now, I did repot my Mele Hell when it was in bloom and did not lose the bloom. So I'm hoping the same thing happens with this one. But I would rather this new growth have somewhere to put its roots instead of holding onto the bloom. And another difference with our Paphiopedilums as opposed to the Phalaenopsis are the roots. So let me just show you real quick. So these roots are nice and fuzzy. Can you see how fuzzy they are? Look at that. Isn't that the cutest little thing? So cute. The other difference is these are not pliable. They are stiff as a board. Like, these are very hard, so you need to be very, very gentle with them and not insist too much on them bending, because they do not like to bend. However, just like our Phalaenopsis, when you have a root that is not good, it is soft. So this one is soft down here, and you can pull it off. You can pull that velamen off as well. And we are left with a string, albeit a dark string. I don't know if you can see that up against my thumb right there. It looks like a really tiny string. So I am going to clean up the root system real quick, and then hopefully the pot that I chose is going to work, because if not, I'm going to have to go get another one. And then I'm going to show you my other paths I have sitting here on the table when we're done. I will be repotting them as well. I'm just not going to repot them on camera because they have the same issue. The roots are exposed, and I've added some bark on top just to keep them from drying out too much. And the way that I water my Paphiopedilums is I do use my tap water. I have a house filtration system. It's not an RO unit, it's a filtration system for all the water in the house. So it's not high in chlorine, but it does have that calcium in it. And I just take and run it under the tap and let it drain real well, and then put it back in its decorative pot. And while we are speaking about decorative pots, before I forget, because I like to forget things, it's what happens when you get old, folks. Don't get old. But when you get a decorative pot to put your orchid in, whether it's a Paphiopedilum or any other orchid, you always want to make sure that you leave space between for airflow. So what I'm going to pot all of them in is a 5-inch plastic pot, and I did make air holes with a soldering iron, but you can use a nail, you can use a screwdriver, as long as you heat it up. And it does not have a cone at the bottom per se, but that's all right. And there are rocks at the bottom here just to lift it up so that I could get that space, because otherwise it would have been too snug of a fit. Even though Paphiopedilums are considered terrestrial orchids, they still like air around their roots. Let's let those aerate for a second. And as always, I have my trusty cup of coffee. Again, not sponsored by anyone. And while I am letting those air out, I will take off anything that is old and desiccated and needs to come off. Some of these roots are just coming off. I may not even need the fiskars. And that is all she wrote on that. So the rest of these roots are rather good. This one is kind of questionable, but I'm going to leave it on there. This one here, it's firm, but it's not hard, but I'm going to leave it. It's the one I just pulled the little string piece off, but we'll leave it on there. And then let me spray her with some hydrogen peroxide. And I got these at my local garden and nursery center, Nick's, I think it's called Nick's Garden or Nick's Nursery, because here in Colorado, it is due to snow any moment, and I didn't want to order anything online and then it be a snow day while they're sitting out. I currently have these guys sitting on my bench in front of my east-facing window, and so far so good. Let's just leave her right there, and I'm going to show you the other two real quick. So this one here is the Sheng Heart, and I purchased her in bud, and she did open her bloom. So let's just look at her. Look at the inside of that, and look at the little fuzzies on the side. Can you see those little fuzzies? She's so pretty. And I love the Vino dark wine, almost a Merlot. And then she's got those two little, it looks like little eyeballs right here, peeking up over the top. And again, she's got the striations on the hood. And then when you look at her upside down, her hood is gorgeous, just gorgeous. And her leaves are a little bit lighter, but they still have the mottling on them. I did see a new growth on her as well. So she will be repotted as well, just because, again, her roots are already exposed at the top, and then these roots that we're going to grow off of this new fan, nothing to go into. So I'll go ahead and do that. And the media is breaking down, so it's pretty funky. It's pretty funky. All right, I think she sat long enough, and I will just put her in. I'm going to put her in small fir bark and moss that has perlite and charcoal already mixed in it, because that's what my Mele Hell is in, and she has done beautifully this year. I'll post the video of the repot of her so you can kind of see, but look at all the roots that she has in the pot. Like, she's just got roots everywhere. So she likes this setup, so I'm going to do it with the other 3 just to keep that going. I figure if it works for her, then it should work for them. And I did wait to make sure that I would be able to grow Paphiopedilum. Now, I have not rebloomed her. Fingers crossed one of those 3 new growths will bloom for me. But again, I'll post a picture of her at some point in the video. Let me go get my potting mix stuff and then we'll get going. All right, so I did not show you my Sheng red apple, who I bought in bud, and she is getting ready to open her bud. But from the one that they did have open, she is going to be a solid Vino Merlot color. Everything about her is dark and luscious, so she's gonna look like a nice glass of wine. Right now she looks like a plum. Doesn't she look like a plum? She's very pretty. Again, mottled leaves. I like the mottled look. And she also has exposed roots if I were to take off the layer of bark that I've put in there. So here is the moss that we're going to use that does have charcoal down at the bottom. So I did add some more moss on top here. There we go. Just reach in the bottom there. All right, so we are going to put a little bit of moss at the bottom, and then I'm just going to layer it through with my small bark. And hopefully I got a good enough pot that all of the roots are going to be covered, and loving the fact that some of those roots are going to be on the outside, so I can monitor and make sure that we don't have rotting going on. Now, how do I want to put her in there though? Probably back here like so. There we go. All right, I'll be back when we're done. All right, so there's that one, and as you can see, she's kind of in the media, but I did make the top layer the bark to keep it from rotting anything. And then I will be giving her a water just because the bark is dry. The moss is moist. It's, well, not moist, it's actually damp. You can't even wring any water out of it. But this way she is set up and doesn't dry out too fast. And of course, for the first few weeks, I will have to water her a little more often just because that bark is new, so it's going to dry the moss out faster. But let's put her in her decorative pot, and she does have that airflow, but it's not so big that it's going to dry that out too quickly. And there she is. So I'll get the other 2 repotted, and then we'll come back and we'll look at them and see what they look like. All right, so here they are, all 4 of my paths that I currently have in their new little setups, as well as the Mele Hell, who has been in this setup for almost a year. And just in case anyone is wondering, there is no specific time that you need to look for in order to repot the Paphiopedilum. They can be repotted at any time of the year. Unlike some Cattleyas, your bifoliates in specific, that you want to wait for new roots, or like Oncidiums where you want to wait for the new growth and new roots. These guys can be potted pretty much any time of the year. Just, you know, be careful with the roots, like I said, because they are super, super stiff. They are not forgiving, and we don't want to break any because they are very slow growers. This is the time of year that most paths will bloom. It is November, and mainly they do bloom in the fall winter time unless they are forced to bloom early, but I usually see them around this time of the year, and from what I've researched, this is the time of year when they would normally bloom for us. So with that, I hope you enjoyed it. Go ahead and give the video a thumbs up, share if you want, and if you'd like to subscribe, that would be appreciated as well. And until the next time, we'll see ya.